Hey guys, what's up? It's Jack and welcome back to another video. There's been this kind of back and forth sort of debate to a certain extent online between very dedicated XDefiant players and very loyal XDefiant players, and those other players that are somewhere in between. It's like they enjoy XDefiant, but they also enjoy other shooters, other games, and then there's obviously people that are strictly on, let's say, the Call of Duty side and will hate on Call of Duty for no reason. At the same time, there's also people that are strictly on the XDefiant side and that will hate Call of Duty for no reason or whatnot. I mean, granted, Call of Duty has given been given people plenty of reasons to hate, but anyway, regardless, you guys get the point, right? Okay, so the big debate is on whether or not XDefiant can actually have an impact on Call of Duty. Now, the way I can answer this question and give my own 2 cents on it is basically by simply not being biased, of course, as well as the context that it's discussed. So what I mean by this is, in what way are we talking about? Because first of all, XDefiant is the new kid on the block that, believe it or not, in some way, shape, or form has almost kind of an identity crisis, but at the same time, it kind of doesn't, because it's that one game that has gotten very popular in a pretty short amount of time, and it is the closest thing that we've had to a Call of Duty game since Call of Duty that has been at least this successful. There are some other games out there that have been mentioned throughout the last decade plus, and we're talking games like Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2, Battlefield Hardline being another or whatnot, and we all know how those turned out, right? So if you're talking about trying to take down Call of Duty, for those of you guys, even for the most dedicated XDefiant, players, I hate to break it to you, but from a financial standpoint, or just taking the game down, so to speak, it's just not going to happen. As a matter of fact, I will actually argue that the opposite is more likely to happen. In other words, XDefiant has a higher chance of making Call of Duty a better game than it does, quote unquote, taking it down. Okay, so from a financial perspective, it's not going to happen. There's only one game that I know of, right? There's only one game that I know of on this planet that, whenever it does come out every 5 to 10 years, right, that where Call of Duty actually has to take second place whenever this game releases, and that franchise is called Grand Theft Auto. And when Grand Theft Auto 6 releases, let me tell you, it is there's nothing that's going to stop that game from being number one. There's absolutely nothing that's going to stop that game from being number one, and rightfully so. And hopefully it delivers on what players hopefully expect or whatnot. As far as I understand, Rockstar hasn't really let their fan base down. They've generated hit after hit after hit, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they come up with as far as Grand Theft Auto is concerned. Now, back on topic here. XDefiant is new. I think we can all agree to that. I mean, it doesn't do anything new, but it's a new game, right? It came out like, 3 weeks ago, going on 4 or something like that. So now, Call of Duty has been established for so many years, right? And not only that, they have a new game that comes out every single year, which obviously doesn't help things if you're looking at it from an XDefiant standpoint. XDefiant is more like a CSGO. It's going to be one game that is hoping to survive for years and years to come while upgrading, right? In terms of giving us more content in the form of factions, modes, maps, weapons, things that make up the foundation of the game. And at the same time, over time, it will basically make it to where the net code will continue to get better and better through small patches and all that kind of stuff. And everything we can expect from a shooter like this. And of course, the biggest thing that XDefiant has going for it, above all else, in my humble opinion, some of you guys may disagree, is the transparency from the devs. The lack of skill-based matchmaking aside, let's be real here. The transparency of the devs is the biggest thing that separates XDefiant from the rest of developers out there, if you think about it, in terms of how much and how often and how clear and how transparent these devs are communicating with us. I have to say, as well as the way that they're communicating as well, with their own type of humor and stuff like that. And you know what? It's kind of genius. You know why? Because they saw an opportunity that where they can do something like this in this way, and they took advantage of it. I mean, it's been right there for the taking all along. You know, Call of Duty could have done it, but of course, they saw themselves as a franchise that literally doesn't have to, and that's correct. They don't have to, because they've got the money. They've got, you know, they make the amount of money that they need to make every year. They have the budget that they need to make their games every year. There's plenty of content creators out there that are mainly Call of Duty content creators, former pro players, etc., etc. They're going to hype up the game, and it's the same cycle over and over and over again. And if you watch some of these videos, like for instance, there's somebody I watch who goes by Fooly, F-O-O-L-Y, and he made a video recently, and the beginning of that video is just like perfect. It is chef's kiss in terms of demonstrating the whole cycle, so to speak. Obviously, there are other content creators that are bigger than him, like Murda Show, for instance, that have described in commentary fashion about the Call of Duty cycle or whatnot. And despite the fact that it's BS, it's still very, very, very powerful, because if you think about it, Call of Duty over the years has had like a 17 plus years head start on a game like this. So it's way ahead, and it's got all these different advantages. So can XDefiant, you know, have an impact on Call of Duty in terms of taking it down or whatnot, or putting a dent in it, so to speak? No. I hate to say it. I want to say yes, but I would be talking out of my ass if I did. The answer to that is no. However, with time, it might help make Call of Duty better if Call of Duty decides. Again, they have to decide to do this. Granted, they don't have to, because they already make their money every year. They do what they do every year, and they succeed at it, despite the fact that, you know, the thing is, despite the fact that, you know, other games out there might do a better job than Call of Duty in terms of doing right by the community, Call of Duty doesn't have to take that same route, simply because of the fact that they're already established. They've had such a head start. They've got the budget, they've got the money and all that kind of stuff. They got the people promoting the damn game and going through this cycle with them. And guess what? People are going to continue to fall into, to buy into it and stuff. However, one thing I will say is that XDefiant does have a chance of being that game that will constantly be in the discussion, right? It's kind of like the brand name versus the generic name, right? So you've got like the brand name, which is Call of Duty, and then you've got the generic name, which is, you know, XDefiant. However, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. You know, if you were to make that kind of analogy, it's like the generic is actually better, because number one, it'll save you money because you can play it for free. But at the same time, you're getting, in the long run, you could be getting something that is of equal quality. It just doesn't happen to be as popular, or as a name that's a lot more recognizable. Like for instance, when you take, like if you were to talk to every single gamer out there, you know, there's gonna be lots of them that haven't even heard of XDefiant. But you talk to every single gamer out there, even players that don't play Call of Duty know what Black Ops is. They know what Call of Duty is, but not everybody will know what XDefiant is. So in other words, what I'm trying to say, if XDefiant is just going to have an impact in general, okay, it's going to take some time. You know what I mean? And truth be told, XDefiant is off to a great start. It does need a shot in the arm as soon as possible. We're getting Team Deathmatch, I believe next week, as of the time of this recording. We're getting Team Deathmatch. We're going to be getting one map per month, of course, and then the season 1 is about 2 weeks away or so. 2.5 weeks away. So, and then obviously every 3 months we're going to be getting a new season. And of course, you know, we're going to be getting content drops and performance upgrades and stuff like that, and updates, you know, during the period of every season, right? So, and of course, plenty of transparency between the developers and the players. So in other words, in terms of players creating the game how they want the game and having an impact on the game through the word of mouth is something that is the biggest difference maker, and that comes from transparency. So from a transparency standpoint, it's the biggest shot that XDefiant has in having some sort of identity and something that will last throughout the years. But it's not necessarily going to have an impact on Call of Duty. And let's say if it were to have an impact on Call of Duty, it won't happen for a while. It's not going to happen for a while because, quite frankly, it's too new. It only came out 4 weeks ago, or about 4 weeks ago as of the time of this recording. And unfortunately, you know, I mean, Call of Duty just has all this other stuff going for it, so it's just not happening. However, XDefiant, remember guys, and I've said this time and time again in previous videos, XDefiant doesn't need to have an impact on Call of Duty. All XDefiant needs to do is be itself, make the right moves, continue what it's doing, what it's currently doing in terms of transparency with the community and whatnot, and just let the game be. Simple as that. These games can coexist. It's not about XDefiant overtaking Call of Duty and being that next FPS that makes the kind of numbers that Call of Duty does. I mean, sure, if that were to happen, I don't think anybody would complain. I don't think anybody from the Ubisoft side would complain. I don't think the developers would complain. But at the end of the day, what XDefiant needs to do is continue to do what it's doing. It needs to be itself, and it needs to focus on that, because that is what's going to make it survive. Because in about by the end of October, where are we at now? June? Yeah. In about 5.5 months from now or so, Black Ops 6 is going to come out. And, obviously whether the game from a multiplayer standpoint is better than XDefiant or not is completely subjective. It depends on the individual you're talking to, and their personal preferences, right? So there's that, right? But that doesn't matter. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what XDefiant needs to do is it needs to survive that below. Okay, because whether you like it or not, XDefiant is when Black Ops 6 comes out, it may take a hit now, and it could be devastating. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be something that necessarily knocks XDefiant off the map or something like that. No. You guys got to remember that in terms of it's not about, Mark Rubin said it himself, it's not about the sprint, it's about a marathon. And Call of Duty basically has the biggest impact during the first few weeks of launch up to the first month, and then after that it starts to die down. And unfortunately, or in XDefiant's case, fortunately, the Call of Duty, the biggest impact that Call of Duty has over the course of the year basically lasts during that time, and then after that it kind of drops, right? So, and that's how it's been over the years. Back in the day, it used to last the entirety of the year, and then once you got to around Call of Duty Ghosts Advanced Warfare time, then things slowly started to go down in terms of how long every Call of Duty game lasts, in terms of how many people keep on playing it throughout its life cycle, which is 1 year, right? And yet again, we've got a continuous cycle of, like, every 12 months a new game comes out, people get hyped for it, people say this is going to be the best Call of Duty ever, or this is going to be the a top 5 COD of all time, blah blah blah. People are going to promote the game because they said that they played it and they said it was amazing, and then lo and behold, more often than not, guess what happens? It ends up being not so amazing, and we fall for it, but yet again, for some reason, about 12 months later, people forget about it. So again, and the reason why I'm saying this is because XDefiant is that game that's doing things differently in that aspect, right? And it's doing things differently in a lot of aspects, but one of the biggest things that it's doing differently is it's a game that's going to continue to evolve over time, as opposed to pressing the reset button every 12 months, right? And going through the same process over and over again. That process works for Call of Duty because Call of Duty is established. It's been doing it for so many years. It's got the budget and all that kind of stuff. It can get away with it because it's successful enough. Once you're successful enough, you just become successful by default after a while. And when you don't need to work as hard anymore, you're just not going to. So Call of Duty doesn't need to. The only time that it will ever need to is if its pockets end up getting affected. And there's no other game other than Grand Theft Auto. But even then, again, they're two different kinds of games. But other than Grand Theft Auto putting Call of Duty at second place, there's no other game, and that game doesn't come out nearly as often as COD does, right? There's no other game and no other franchise that has that level of impact on COD on a year-to-year basis, okay? So, as a matter of fact, there's only one thing that can be done, in my opinion, to change Call of Duty for the better, and that is to affect its pockets. And as of right now, for the longest time, nothing has changed, unfortunately. And until that does happen, then it's just not going to happen. The only thing the biggest that XDefiant could do, in my humble opinion, in the long run, is be that other game that always existed and that started building a bigger and bigger and bigger fan base throughout the years with their transparency, and to set that example and hopefully not only be that game that always matters, despite the fact that it's, you know, not as even though it's not as big as a Call of Duty, so to speak, and even though it may not be as money power, like as powerful as a Call of Duty franchise from a money perspective and budget perspective, so to speak. However, it can be the difference maker. It can inspire other developers to enter this playing field and to do it the way that it's supposed to be done, which is the way XDefiant is doing it so far. And if XDefiant messes up, I will say something about it. But until then, that is the way it is. So XDefiant, despite the fact that I love the game, despite the fact that I've been putting ridiculous amount of hours into it, I mean, I'm a level 112, for goodness sake. And let me tell you, XDefiant, as a person who no longer plays COD and who's been pretty much playing XDefiant, and previously I was playing Halo and a bunch of single player games, I can tell you that XDefiant has a long way to go before it can have any sort of impact in the industry at all, because it needs to prove itself and it needs to survive the hits that are going to come along the way, and it's going to have to go through it every single year with every single Call of Duty release. Simple as that. But the good news is that now there's at least competition, which is good. Maybe not on a financial standpoint, because Call of Duty is so far ahead and it's had so many years. However, from a game quality standpoint, from a development standpoint, from a time standpoint, in terms of the game mattering, you know, over the course of years, I think the future is looking bright if the dev team continues to go in the direction that they're going with everything that they've been doing, as well as been given the freedom by Ubisoft to do so. So again, it still has a long way to go. So, but I just wanted to make this commentary and to give my 2 cents on it, and to kind of get kind of a, you know, let's not kid ourselves moment here. You know what I mean? So, and again, you could think that XDefiant is a better game than COD. There's certainly reasons for that, you know, and even in that department, from a multiplayer standpoint, it still has a little bit more ways to go. But again, it's on its way, and that's the beautiful thing. It's on its way. It's finally released for almost a month now, and the game is on its way, and the wheels are turning, and people are starting to talk about other things other than the fact that, oh, the game hasn't released yet, blah, blah, blah. We're still talking about the netcode being improved further. We're talking about Team Deathmatch coming out next week. We're talking about the bunny hopping issues and debates. We're talking about the upcoming ranked mode, the upcoming S&D mode, which I think is going to be called Bomb or whatever. So the good news is that the wheels are turning and we're starting to talk about other things. Content creation is great. Many people, both small and large, are making content about the game. This is great. And these are the things that I believe play a big role in keeping XDefiant alive, because XDefiant needs our help just as much as we need XDefiant. You know, we players who love arcade shooters, who, for instance, just to give an example, absolutely loved Call of Duty, and then over the years, Call of Duty has let them down for whatever reason. And we all know what those reasons are, but everybody's got their own reasons as to what the biggest reason is why they don't play COD anymore. And the thing is, we've got XDefiant now, and a lot of players love it. I've even had people that say that they are noobs, but they love the fact that the game has no SBMM. You know what I mean? So with that being said, you know, XDefiant needs us and we need XDefiant. And as long as that relationship remains strong, I think the game can weather the storm and at least survive and thrive and continue to get better over time. In 1 year from now, I think XDefiant is going to be, if it keeps going in this direction, I think XDefiant is going to be a game that will always be talked about. And I don't mean that in past tense. I mean always being talked about in terms of, every single year, it's always going to enter that conversation. You know what I mean? People are going to be talking about COD, but now they're also going to be talking about XDefiant. And this is a good thing. And the more games come into that conversation over the course of time, the better, because competition is good, variety is good, it's good for both content creation, it's good for both gaming, it's good for everything. So, but anyway, with that being said, guys, that's pretty much all I had to say. This was a pretty long commentary, but I had to give my 2 cents. And it is an important conversation, but it is one that we need to be realistic about, and we need to stop making, obviously, through obvious reasons, there's always going to be comparisons with COD, and that's fine. But let's not get into ridiculous territory to where we start saying things like it's a COD killer. You know, obviously that kind of title makes for very interesting YouTube videos because they make you want to click on them or whatnot. But it's never been about the game being a COD killer. Nor is that the goal from what I could see. It's about the game being itself, and the game having a place in this arcade shooter genre, because there's no other game that has managed to survive and thrive other than COD. And part of that is because COD was coming out every year. So now XDefiant has entered the playing field, and it's going to be very interesting how things turn out in the next 12 months. But anyway, and hopefully it does. And if it does, there's a higher chance of other games out there stepping up and gaining some confidence and say, hey, we can survive too. So let's give it a shot. And that's all we need. But anyway, guys, that's it. That's all I got. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch and or listen. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.